dancing, Johnny. The theme music's growing on you.
I tell you what, something catchy about this one. It's getting me moving in the morning. Not too fast, but just a little bit.
You're feeling the groove.
That's it.
Pierre, don't dance. We've seen it before, Pierre. Don't do it.
Not good for anyone.
Don't dance. Happy Thursday to you, folks, and welcome to Got Your Back, NHL edition. Rashad, LeBrun, and MJ. Of course, as always, brought to you by Cross Country Canada, supplies and rentals. They provide equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry, but what sets them apart, that get-her-done attitude, it's a core value of their company. They have it proudly displayed on the walls at each of their branches, and they live by that credo. They'll bend over backwards to get their clientele what they need and when they need it. No excuses, and they take great pride in that attitude. We take great pride in having them as title sponsors here on Got Your Back NHL edition. Okay, Johnny, I always try and figure out where you are based on like the paint on the wall behind you, the quality of the door. I have to say, wherever you are right now, it looks kind of clinical, almost like a waiting room of some sort.
Yeah,
it's just this sort of drab tan brown with a heavy looking door. Like, where are you?
I'm in a hotel room in New Jersey. If you turn the camera around, you'd see the nice Hudson River across to Manhattan.
Okay.
But I'm down for NHL Network for a couple of days, so it's more yellowy. It's not pleasant. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's not the nicest decor I've ever been in, but it will have to do because I still got to wake up in the morning and talk to you, no matter where I'm at.
Yeah. So what you're saying, MJ, is you're not in Manhattan.
Yeah.
I want to make it clear because what I tell myself when I come to work at NHL Network is I'm going to New York.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to Jersey.
Baby.
I'm going to Jersey. I'm not actually going to New York, which is fine in its own right, but I'm very close to New York. I can get there quickly if I have to.
You know, people always, going to New York is a big deal for people that have never been there before. But Pierre, I think back to how long were we there? Was it like 2.5 weeks we were there, that one trip
Lockout
for the
watch?
Lockout?
Oh, well, I've had a couple. I think the one with you was 2012. I also spent most of 04-05 in New York back when my days at the Canadian Press.
Yeah.
During that lockout, because of course there was no hockey that year. But yeah, you just keep extending your hotel stay because you got a note from someone saying they're talking again tomorrow.
Here's my 2012 lockout story. So I'm retired at this point, right? So I'm just following it from afar, working at TSN, and I get a evil quizmaster sends a note. He's asking because it seems like things are percolating close to it being solved. He's like, hey, can you be in studio? Like, I'm like, no, I was up in, at a cottage or whatever. So I'm like, I'm a couple hours outside Toronto. Like, I can get there in a couple hours. So he's going back and forth. He's like, well, I think it's going to happen. So finally I just jump in the car at like midnight to drive home to get ready to go there at 8 a.m. the next day. And while I'm driving, and it's February, I think it's snowstorm time.
I believe it was around 2 a.m., MJ, something like that.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I get a text from someone in the room saying it's done. But I'm driving these back roads in a blizzard, and I'm like, I can't formulate a tweet or a text to I could have broken that it was done. Because then I found, was it Kevin Paul Allen? Who broke it first? Somebody from the States broke it first.
Yeah.
And I looked. He might have broken it in Canada. But anyway, I had it probably I probably had it 17 minutes before he did it, but I'm like, I can't even do it at this point. I could have made my debut as an insider with the scoop of the lockout ending, but I missed my window because I was a little gun shy of even posting it because I was also driving.
Yeah. Well, too much inside baseball here, but one of the dangerous things about the end of a lockout, and I've covered a few, is that I'm super conservative about that because what one side in the negotiation may feel is a done deal may not necessarily be quite a done deal on the other side. So I get super sort of nervous at the end that both sides are confirming because that's happened, right?
Yeah, you would need both sides. You would need both sides giving you the head nod, wouldn't you, P? Not just one side?
For me, yeah.
Yeah.
I only had one side. I had one, one source.
Good thing you kept driving, buddy.
Well, you would have been right because it happened.
But I would have been right.
Within.
I would have phrased it, hearing that they have settled. Not saying they have, but I'm hearing that they have.
Give yourself an out, right?
Yeah,
There you
exactly.
go. My memory of that lockout. By the way, how the hell did we get talking about the lockout? We're in the middle of the flip.
Yeah, I know. What are we doing?
Yeah, I know. My memory of the lockout, Pierre, really quickly, because we had the satellite truck and we would be waiting and waiting and waiting till all hours of the night. And I would get in and I walk into the satellite truck, Johnny, and Pierre is standing there in his long black TSN trench coat, and he's sleeping, standing up. He's just leaned against the wall, sleeping, standing up in the satellite truck.
Like a horse.
So
like
Dregs
they
and
teach
I,
you in the CIA.
Dregs and I we had a roll of hockey tape and we were just peeling strips of hockey tape and putting them on his back. So his back was just covered in hockey tape and then the news broke shortly after. So anyways, enough of that nonsense. We've got lots of drama happening in the NHL playoffs. We've got favorites being upset. We've got goaltenders making unbelievable saves in the last second of games and lots to talk about. So, gentlemen, let's get to our breakdown. That, of course, brought to you by Kuma Outdoor Gear, where they've got a wide range of gear to fit all your needs, from tents and sleeping bags, travel games, pet products, drinkware, and they're some kind of excited about their new Switchback heated chair, the first heated chair powered by Bluetooth technology. It has dual heat zones in the seat and the back. You can adjust from your phone. You can preheat your chair before you go outside. It's got an insulated cup holder on one side and a wine glass holder on the other. I can't get over the wine glass holder. I know I fixate on that one quality, but when I first saw it, I was like, man, Pierre's going to love that one. Honestly,
I was going to
Pierre,
say, are you speaking
there's one
to
on
me,
the way,
or?
bud. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's in the mail right now, buddy. It's on the way. Anyways, Kuma Outdoor Gear sponsoring our breakdown segment. Okay, so let's start with last night, you guys. Man, a couple of favorites. Dropping games last night, and boy, just really exciting games, lots of drama. Johnny, we got to start with the Avalanche and the Kraken here, though. 3-2 the game, 3-2 the series, and the Avalanche suddenly teetering on the brink here. What is happening with the Avalanche that's put them in this position?
So I think it's a few different things, Shoggy, but mostly it's the erosion of their depth. Like, I think the star players, McKinnon and Rantanen and Makar, when he's been playing, have generally been lights out elite level players. Yeah. And Seattle's plan was always going to be, we can't compete with your stars, but we can beat the rest of your roster with ours. And that's what's happened. Prior to last night's game, we did a little thing on it. Those guys, Makar, McKinnon, Rantanen, had been on 10 of the 12 goals they scored. They'd been on the ice for 11 of the 12 goals they scored. The only one they weren't on the ice for was scored by Nichushkin, who's no longer on the team or around the team right now. So this is what's going on. And it's not like Seattle's getting this done with crazy shooting, hot power play. Their goaltender's been really good, but not ridiculous. They are just flat out outplaying Colorado. They have a hard time. Colorado has a hard time dealing with the pace of the Kraken, Seattle. I think me and a lot of people underestimated how much trouble Seattle would give Colorado, because at this point, they've been the better team. They don't have the best players, but they've been the better team, and their goalie's been good enough that has allowed them to be in every game. And they're going home to close out the series, and they probably should be favored to do so because of how the series has gone so far.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, boy, I've been wrong about this series. Not that many people pick Seattle, but just that I thought this would be a quick series for Colorado. I really did, the way the Avs played in the final month entering the playoffs. But the Avs right now, again, their lineup already thinned out last summer with Kadri and Burakovsky leaving, and of course thinned out again now without Makar last night. They'll get him back, but they're not themselves. But let's not take away from what you just said, MJ. Seattle, there's not a lot of drop off on their lineup. Now the top end of their lineup doesn't match up with the top line on most teams, but then it stays pretty constant. I mean the 4-line attack for that team is really built for the playoffs, if you think about it, in terms of rolling lines and trusting different guys on different nights. And how sweet would this be for Philip Grubauer, obviously, who couldn't come to terms to stay in Colorado a couple of years ago, got a better deal in Seattle, has struggled in Seattle, let's be fair, and has kept his best for this first-round series here with his old team. So some great storylines there. But they're the champs for a reason. I'm not ready to count out the Avs right now.
Yeah, 918 save percentage. He pointed to Grubauer there. Georgiev 906 in his 5 games. Johnny, so Nathan McKinnon last night, obviously extremely frustrated, had some frustrated comments after the game. And this goes back to the officiating discussion that's being had all over the place in the playoffs this year. Let's deal with that one specific incident that happened last night. Felt like he was tripped at one end, goal down at the other end. And the biggest non-call of the night might have been him smashing his stick in absolute fury at the official.
In the glass.
Into the glass.
Mm-hmm.
And, in front of everybody.
That sounds like a 10 coming up, that kind of behavior, right?
That really, really did. What did you think of that non-call, though, Johnny? And then we'll get into the bigger discussion about, this officiating thing that is cropping up in almost every series.
So it could have been a trip, sure. Absolutely. But there's the nature of the game is that there are many infractions every single shift that could be called. Like every time I try to skate around the defense, I'm like, that could be interference. That could be holding. Doesn't mean you can stop playing. And I think that's where Nathan MacKinnon let his frustration get the best of him because he pulled himself out of the play because he was so upset about the call not being made. Eventually changed. The guy coming on for him was late getting back in the play. And, 4-on-3 ensues and they score a goal. I get it. And the star players, and you know it well in Edmonton, Connor McDavid, like those guys get fouled more than anyone else. They get more infractions committed against them that are not called because they have the puck, because they force guys into situations where they're out of position and they're hooking and they're holding and they're grabbing, and they don't get called all the time. So could it have been a trip? Absolutely. Absolutely. Does he have every right to be upset? Certainly. But you can't stop playing, Pierre. And I think that's, that would be the irritating part. Not only was he ticked off about not getting the penalty, but he actually put his team in a bad spot reacting to it. Part of the reason why he's great is he's so fiery, but that time it felt like that fire got him a little bit out of sorts on the ice.
Yeah, and you give him a couple days, he'll be the first one to tell you that he made a mistake there. But it's the root of his frustration, I think, that we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. And, generally, I don't like this conversation every year. All the whining, I just start rolling my eyes. And good on Tom McClellan in your series, Ryan, after Game 5, that crazy comeback by the Oilers where I think someone tried to goad him into an officiating comment because of the Oilers tied it on the power play there, and he took the high road. Sometimes they go your way, sometimes they don't, essentially is what he said. I'm paraphrasing. Good for him, because I think we need to hear more of that, because that is the reality of it, is that no matter where the officiating is, it's going to go both ways. But having said all that, I had a player in the series I'm covering, and I won't name him because we were just shooting off the cuff, who said, man, he goes, the thing is, I don't know from night to night where that line is going to be. That I'm just sharing his frustration in a moment. And he goes, that's the thing for him, is he tries to figure out in the opening minutes of a game, where we're at here. And he just wants consistency from game to game in a series. And of course you got different refs every night. So that was a frustration from one player in the Tampa-Toronto series.
I think, and I'm sure that guy really feels it that way, but I think part of that is just an easy thing to say, because generally speaking, when you're that comment, I'm trying to figure out where the standard is. The standard doesn't deviate on tripping or high sticking. The standard deviates on roughing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's
the extracurricular stuff.
Like that's where the standard, what is a board is not a board. I guess that's debatable, but that doesn't really deviate. It's always debatable. Yeah. It's the stuff, basically the roughing stuff is where people try to figure out the standard. And that does change. Sometimes they're pulling guys out of the pile. Sometimes they're pulling one, and you got to figure that out. But, most calls are not really that different game to game, even though players may feel that way. I think it's also worth noting, this is a conversation we have every year. It seems like it's really topical now because we're in the middle of it and we're passionate about it. And there's been some big moments with big players and big reactions. And the power plays are so good. And that's
overtime winners on the power play, right?
Yeah, but
overtime winners on the power play. When do you see power plays in overtime? Unless someone
when you break
is on their way to the hospital.
Right?
Yes. And I'm not saying that was a bad call.
That's when you call penalties, right? When William Nylander's walking in the slot with a great chance and gets tripped clearly in his skates, that's when you call a trip. Those are the right calls. I just, talk to Leaf fans from 1993, talk to Shark fans from whatever the 2017 with Joe Pavelski, whatever that was with the high stick from Vegas. Like, there are big moments that are controversial, I suppose, all the time. I don't know if this year is any different, Pierre, even though it feels like it right now.
And this is anecdotal and it's not scientific, but the one thing I wonder about, and I talked about this with a scout in the press box the other night, the regular season today's game, there's a lot of business decisions being made on the ice through 82 games. I'm just going to be polite about it. It's not as physical a game in my mind as when you played, Mike, and certainly before you in the 80s, which is fine. It's a fast game. It's entertaining, but there's a lot of let's get through this season unscathed if we can. And then the playoffs come, and everyone's been let out of a cage. Mm-hmm. And what I'm saying for a ref's perspective is the product that they've been trying to maintain a standard on for 82 games for 8 months is a vastly different product once the puck drops for the first week of the playoffs. And I think that's probably a difficult adjustment for them, but they really should have their hands on it by now. We're midway to late in the first round here.
All right. But if we're trying to find, so I don't know if we're going down this road right now, but like whether it's the Minnesota Marcus Foligno stuff or, these different penalties, the no trip on that, like if we're trying to find solutions, I think just the referees doing their job. I think part of it is like you have a lot of young refs in the league. It's a young man's game. Yeah. You need 30-year-olds who can skate well enough to get around it. And so you have refs that maybe haven't been in the American League level for 7 years. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like a team with a relatively thin farm system. You get called
up to the show earlier. They're getting to the show earlier,
right? And you're learning as you go. So maybe that's part of it. But I wonder if there's also some appetite. I know they are loath to add replays, Pierre. But, an eye in the sky, a voice in the ear that says, hey, that Marcus Foligno hit on Hakanpää, that's not interference. That's just a hit. Wave it off. I don't know. It introduces another element, another opinion, and there's some danger in that. But I don't know.
Well, as you guys know, they've talked about that at the GM meetings. They can talk about a lot of different things, but it doesn't mean they'll ever happen. But they have talked about that. The obvious concern is lengthening games. Easy for me to say this morning. And I share that concern. Yeah,
legitimate.
So I think that's why I think the league keeps that line pretty tight because Pandora's box, how many different things are we looking at? But to your point, MJ, maybe it's just common sense at some point. Maybe the situation room in Toronto when something so flagrant has a chance to buzz down and talk to the ref for the betterment of that moment. I don't know. That's an interesting one for sure.
Sounds like an off-season podcast. Let's move on because the refereeing has taken up a lot of bandwidth and oxygen in this year's playoffs.
Blame the Quizmaster.
So. What's that?
Blame the Quizmaster.
Yeah. I tell you what, but a guy like Marcus Foligno, at this point, he's got to now, just like he toes the line, he's got to back off the line. He's having a hard time finding it. He's got to back off it. Even if he thinks he's in the right, and in some ways he is in the right, you got to adjust. As a player, you have to adjust.
Was the bigger surprise for you last night, Pierre, the Colorado results or the Boston result? Because we had two results that were eye-catching last night.
By far the Boston result. I'm not shocked. Right, Seattle's been the better team in that series. So once you adjust by watching that series, Colorado is going to have to find another gear here. They're trailing in every game. So I wasn't surprised with no Kel McCarr last night that Seattle went in there and won. Boston was really surprising to me because they really beat up the Panthers, both on the scoreboard and in another fashion in the 2 games in Florida. And it just felt like one of those, let's come home and get some rest here and win this in 5. And good for the Panthers, man. They got outshot and outchanced, but the Sergei Bobrovsky and finding a way there for the Florida Panthers, that's got some spice now.
Be honest, Pierre. If I would have asked you 12 hours ago, who should play 14 hours ago, who should play for Florida, who would you have said? Because I said Lion. I said Lion yesterday, and I was dead wrong, apparently.
Yeah, I would have said Bobrovsky because at this point with their season on the line, you got to go with the guy making that money. I mean, that's his job.
He didn't play down the stretch with the season on the line.
I know, but I think Alex Lyon has that served its
run its course.
Run its course. Yeah.
But run its course. I think that I mean, paying the guy $10 million, man. Yeah. And, he looked like it last night.
Well, he earned a pile of it with one save basically last night. I mean, drama, Johnny.
It's crazy. So
last second, breakaway, season on the line.
Florida offensive zone faceoff, 7 seconds left. You're like, okay, they're going to try to run a play. They got all their offensive guys out there, Montour and Ekblad and the big boys. And draws sort of won by Florida to the top of the circle, but Marchand jumps through Montour steps forward, pokes it past him, and he's in alone. And I don't know. So I remember when I used to play, guys, I would always make sure in every rink, it became instinctive, but when you're going around the rinks, where is the end board clock? Right? Like sometimes they're on the, they used to be on a screen behind the goal. It's not there anymore. They're kind of on like the ribbon that goes around above the suites.
Yeah.
I would like to know, like I'd be killing a penalty and I want to be able to know where I can look up and find the clock. Right. And so I wonder if Brad Marchand knew, like, check 3, I'm good.
I'm sure he did.
He had enough time to do whatever he wanted. Deke, shoot,
whatever,
take it all the way. Right. And so he goes all the way in, and Bob kicks it out, and then Ekblad almost throws the rebound into the net with his glove. Can you imagine? It would have ended the series like that. Would have just been drama personified.
Marchand has scored. He scores from that distance a fair bit.
His wrister is good from 30 feet. He doesn't have to get right on top of the goalie at all.
Yeah.
He's already scored one on Lyon from that far away. Probably the reason why Lyon's not playing. But Bob was good. Bob was excellent, and I guess this is the fear for the Bruins. They were the better team last night. Boston would have, the deserve to win-o-meter would have been heavily into Boston's favor. But the shorter a series gets, the more likely crazy things can happen. So now you're talking best regular season in the history of the league is 2 games away from being out. Is it inconceivable that Sergei Bobrovsky could be ridiculously good for 2 games? Of course it's not. And this is what's introduced at this point. You've introduced the randomness of hockey where the best teams don't always win because it's deep enough in the series where it doesn't have to happen too many times.
Well, and not to point out the obvious, but Sergei Bobrovsky was the guy who swept the 62-win Tampa Bay Lightning. So
that's a good point by you.
And hasn't done a whole lot since, but obviously that's part of his body of work. And that's why hockey's crazy, man. The Panthers they feel like a 2-line team right now. They're so top heavy with the matchups that they trust. And Sam Bennett, by the way, has been unreal since coming back. Really good for Florida, but they just can't go toe for toe matchup wise with Boston. No. So the odds are that the Bruins will win this in the next game. But to MJ's point,
and then meanwhile,
it's worth noting,
Johnny.
The gamer, he's an effing gamer. You know what? And I was kind of joking.
So after the game, right? Paul Maurice talking about
Matthew Tkachuk, and they said, what do you make of just his presence or something?
Yeah. And he was a bleepity bleep gamer.
He's a gamer, and it's a good way to describe him. He's a hockey player.
Great celebration.
He was right into it, right down to find his goaltender right at center ice the whole bit. But
friend of the podcast.
It's amazing how those players find themselves in those moments somehow more often than the players who play otherwise. Like I played a lot. The puck never bounced on my stick in overtime where I could just walk around the goalie and throw it in the net. But Matthew Tkachuk finds a way and certainly doesn't panic when he gets it and he pulls it around the goalie and shovels it in the empty net. And Ullmark, who scored a goal, is quite good at playing the puck, just kind of misread where he put it. And the Panthers have life. I mean, it's gonna be wild. Like at some point, Pierre, the pressure will flip to Boston to finish this.
Yeah, and if there's any team that I feel like can handle it, I mean, gosh, the tremendous leadership in that Bruins room. I think they could handle it, and I think they're going to win this. Obviously, I think you guys do too. But if Florida somehow pull this off,
crazy.
Do Sergei Bobrovsky and Bill Zito just put out a book called "How You Beat record-setting regular season teams
how
in
to
the
knock
first
down
round?"
Giants?
Zito, the AGM in Columbus that year as well.
How to grow a David to take down Goliath, apparently. Yeah.
43-point difference between these teams in the regular season.
Crazy. It's crazy.
But man, I love there's gamers on both sides. That's the beauty of this series is the competitors in this series. Like even Taylor Hall, the way he's sort of asserted himself and been able to get work through offensively. Verhaeghe, I think, had 3 primary assists last night. It was really entertaining hockey to watch and a great result. And then for it to be Ullmark making the big mistake, the potential Vezina winner here, that was great drama in that game. It's going to be a fun finish. Okay, let's go north of the border here, guys, to Canada. We got the Leafs and Tampa. Mike, how different does it feel this year with the Leafs, if it does for you, and why? Where's it coming from?
Okay, so
is it different?
So I
think I know where you're going here.
I don't want to be Debbie Downer here. It feels different because they're winning. I mean, but beyond that, they were better in last year's playoffs than they have been in this year's playoffs. They were better than Tampa more often last year than this year. Now, that doesn't matter. All that matters is it's 3-1. And so I guess that's different. But I don't know if I'm like, oh, look, they figured it out. They don't get intimidated by the moment. I'm like, I don't know if that's true. They played garbage last game in the first period. Garbage. And a pivotal point.
Second period, really. Yeah.
No, but the first period was awful by their standards. But the other thing that's different, Shaggy, is that this star-driven team, this top-heavy team, core 4 forwards plus Ryan O'Reilly and Morgan Riley, those guys are all playing and producing lights out. That is different. And so they've played better previously, but those guys weren't scoring like they're scoring now. Mitch Marner's the quietest 11 points, whatever he has in 4 games you could even imagine, but he's got 11 points. Yeah. You know, that part is different. And the power play, which has let them down brutally in playoffs past, is good again. So that's where I say they're different. Star players are going, power play is going, but I'm not acting like somehow this is a revelation. They've figured everything out, Pierre, because they've not been that good.
No, and again, let's just stick with the facts. I mean, what was a revelation in the games in Tampa, other than they got outplayed for vast stretches in both games, is that they pulled 2 games out of the gutter that this core has not shown that ability before in the playoffs. Were they lucky? I don't know. I mean, they made amazing plays to come back in that game, so I'm not going to say they were lucky. They've not been great in this series, but they've come back in a fashion that they've just not done before in a consistent manner. So that's true. That's a fact. They'll need to play way better on this night to close this out. That's the Eastern Conference standard is still led by Tampa Bay until we're all told otherwise, and that's a proud group that's going to come out better tonight. But let's also call it for what it is. I wrote about Andrei Vasilevskiy today, and it's not all on him, clearly, but I got a lot of different goalie opinions on it. I mean, 19 goals against in 4 games and
4.33.
You talked about last year compared to this year, MJ. Well, there's a major difference. I mean, especially in Game 6 and Game 7 last year, Vasilevskiy took over. But again, it's not all on the goalie. I mean, Tampa's blue line is not the same without Ryan McDonough. They really missed Ryan McDonough. And Chernak. So there you go. Right. 2. So the 3 of the top 4 minute guys last year when the Lightning beat the Leafs in 7 games were Hedman, McDonough, Chernak, and Sergachev. They're down to 2. They played the first game and a half of the series down to 1 until they got Hedman back. And you just see it. I mean, you don't need – you see it with the eye test. There are breakdowns.
There's more room. There's more room and more accessibility to the net.
Yeah.
When the lower pairs, both on the power play and at 5-on-5, because of the different personnel that Tampa doesn't have for them. So that is different as well.
Too. And the goalie can be better too.
He better be better.
Yeah. It was Derek Lalonde spent some time on the main panel there for our friends across the street, and had the really interesting comment about Vasilevskiy and the study they did on him, and some real inside.
I
found it fascinating.
Fascinating
analysis. I included it on my column today for sure. You have to. I mean, that's part of the series now. Yeah.
Did
Johnny run people through it quickly?
Okay, so he was on the panel. Derek Lalonde, head coach of the Detroit Red Wings, former assistant with Tampa. He knows that group intimately. And so he said that they commissioned a study about all the goals against Vasilevskiy and found out that Andrei Vasilevskiy was among the league's worst goalies at tracking, spotting, and saving pucks from the point through traffic. And given the goals that have gone in from pucks through traffic, tips and rebounds and screens and otherwise, it seemed like a very topical and fascinating bit of insight into the sort of research that teams do on their own players, but also what they found in that he struggles in this department where he is struggling right now. So I of course think everyone's like, wow, that's really interesting.
It was fascinating.
Like it was eye-opening. Now,
I mean, honestly, that really led me in part to why I wrote the piece I wrote today. And I reached out to a lot of different people in the goalie community. Evgeny Nabokov, as you guys know, was a mentor early on in Vasilevskiy's career. They overlapped in Tampa. Nabokov is the director of goaltending for the Sharks. And I texted him yesterday and I said, what's your take on Vasilevskiy right now and his message back, which I used in the piece, was absolutely nothing wrong with Andre's game. Lots of long shots with tips, deflections, screens, and rebounds. I have to give Toronto credit. So he's kind of actually confirming exactly what Derek Lalonde said in a way, but he's saying it's not the goalie.
But John Cooper had a very strong pushback. He basically suggested that's not true. Yeah. That never happened.
Having said that, I found Marty Braun and Noodles had some really interesting insight about what they're seeing in Vasilevskiy's game, as well as an Eastern Conference goalie coach that, for obvious reasons, couldn't give his name because he believes there's some fatigue there. I don't know about the fatigue factor. I will point this out. Andrei Vasilevskiy has played 217 regular season games since the start of the 1920 season, plus now 75 playoff games. That's an average of 73 starts a season since the start of 1920 if you combine playoffs and regular season. That's
little tough getting in and out of that butterfly.
That's a lot. And now, again, he's not an old guy, so maybe he's, maybe it's nothing.
Grant Fuhr's on line one saying, "Hold my beer." But just before we turn the page, the story, which was interesting from Lalonde, and the pushback from Cooper, two parts to me. There's a lot of reason for John Cooper to refute this. His team's in the middle of this series. His players struggling. He's got to protect them. Yeah. There is, I feel, zero reason for Derek Lalonde to make this up. What? To get a sound? He's an NHL coach. He's not trying to audition for a TV job.
Yeah.
He's just why would he make that up? I feel when you're saying it's a he said, I'm buying the guy who's got nothing to gain by saying it.
Yeah, there's no way he made it up. I guess now we're in the weeds, but is there a nuance that he misremembers on what they were talking about?
I'm saying the study existed. It was commissioned and it found something. That's what I'm saying. I'm buying Lalonde. But I also think, Pierre, what about the idea that is there a protocol, some sort of code of silence for intellectual property that you can't say on TV? He'll take that with him to Detroit, but you're not supposed to say when you work for a different organization, hey, in Tampa, when I don't work there anymore, we did this and found I wonder if Coop's sending a text hey, what's going on here, buddy? Yeah. You got to keep that to yourself.
And that's why, like I said, the goalie coach from another Eastern Conference team couldn't give his name because he'd probably get fired if he was quoted saying some of the things that he noticed, because that's their team intel on Vasilevskiy that he was sharing with me. But the other thing I would say is, and I said this on the Sports Center hit with Masters and CJ, is what Derek Lalonde said really that that revealing about Vasilevskiy? What did teams try to do to Carey Price when he was at the apex of his career?
Yeah, but to suggest
his eyes away and get deflections and rebounds,
yes. To suggest that the own club, his own club,
we found a weakness in the world's best goalie.
We saw an issue. We dug into it, and it was confirmed that he's one of the worst in the league at this. It's okay not to be the best. He's one of the worst.
One of the worst.
To me, I think it wasn't nothing.
Yeah.
Austin Matthews' second goal where he tips it out of midair. That's a world-class play. What goalie is going to stop that?
Nobody. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter. We can go through goal by goal. It doesn't matter. The story I find just fascinating
that it was
how it's playing out.
I agree. And you know what? I hope he doesn't take too much heat for it. I hope it's no big deal, because I thought it was great TV, tremendous value. And when you have people on that are that close to the game and they're willing to bring that type of insight as a viewer,
it's brilliant.
It was really, really good. So sending props to the competition there. But I hope he doesn't back off that stuff 1 ounce. Okay, guys, let's move over to the Edmonton Oilers. Listen, Zach Hyman checks into the series. Through 3 games, he had done quite little, and then all of a sudden starts putting his mark. Couple big performances. Leon Draisaitl continues to just be all over this series and absolutely dominant. The Quizmaster wanted me to ask the question today, should they start giving out a cape after the game in Edmonton rather than the biker vest that they do? But Draisaitl, healthy, is Draisaitl'ing, Johnny, and the Oilers here are in pretty good position.
They are. Leon deserves so much credit. He operates unfairly in Connor's vacuum, and Leon Draisaitl is the second best offensive player in the world. It's just that he happens to play behind a guy who's kind of clearly the first. But it doesn't make him any less good. And the fact of the matter is, in the playoffs, Leon Draisaitl's been better than Connor McDavid statistically over the course of their careers. And Leon Draisaitl is like third all time in points per game in the playoffs. I mean, he's doing some pretty historical stuff night after night after night. What's interesting to me, Shaggy, is that the comeback in Game 4 was pivotal for many reasons. The result, of course. But the fact of the matter is that you got Evander Kane involved with a big goal, and you had Zach Hyman more involved. And now other guys were feeling good about themselves other than Bouchard, McDavid, and Draisaitl. Like, those were the three that were doing all the scoring. Yeah. And now you had other guys who are good players, Pierre, feeling a little bit more confident, a little bit better about their game. And now you see them just doing a little bit more of that. Korpisalo has taken a bit of a dip, which I'm surprised, big time. Guess you give credit to the Oilers for that as well. But the Oilers have found holes in that King defensive system that it took them a while to sort of flesh it out, probably 3 games before they started finding some gaps in there. And it feels like the last couple of games, they found some that they can exploit.
Yeah. And we need to mention this 2 playoff series in a row. Philip Deneau is really good at what he does.
Oh,
yeah. Like, so it's good. Just like,
Pierre, real quick, what makes him unique is that he's the rarest of players who can score, but when he gets in this kind of matchup, he does not care about scoring.
Doesn't care.
Right. If he gets a big nothing burger for 21 straight games against the other team's best players, he'll love what he has done. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we know he's out there to slow down McDavid, but he doesn't even, like, when Montreal made the final, he barely scored. He could have won the Conn Smythe. Like, he just doesn't think about it that way.
Too busy shutting down Austin Matthews and Mark Scheifele and whoever else on the way there. He reminds me, given his roots, it's an apt comparison, but he reminds me a lot of Guy Carbonneau in his heyday, who was a big scorer in junior, but made his mark in the NHL as one of the best defensive centers in the history of the league. And Carbonneau was the same, MJ, where he probably could have scored more than he did in his career, but he was just Mr. Shutdown in an era where it was even harder to do that. And Deneau has so much of that in him. So I'm just saying, you can't just, I think we have to mention that in the Connor McDavid conversation. It's not like Connor McDavid's going out there not feeling like himself. He's got a tough matchup.
For sure he does. Evan Bouchard's sitting there with 8 points. Draisaitl with 10 in the 5 games that they've played. But, it would seem to me that the Oilers have had the formula the entire time here, Johnny. Like, when they've wanted to and when they've played their game, they've carried so much of the play in this series. But the Kings are plucky. They get down, but they don't get too far down. And they seem to find a way to scrap their way back into games. But it would seem to me that all series long, the Oilers have had the formula. It's just whether they've applied it properly or not.
Yeah, and the Kings make you do it all the time, right? Like, they make you stay with it. And if you deviate, then you play into their game plan. If you take penalties, you let their power play, which is also very good, hurt you. The whole idea of the Kings seems to be like, bend, don't break, defend, but don't give up the really great chance. Give up a whole bunch of chances, but not the breakaways, not the 2-on-1s, not the real stuff in tight. And they do a really good job with it. I think their goaltender is taking a bit of a dip as well. Like, to play that way when you don't have the puck as so much, you need good goaltending to be able to hold the fort. And Korpisalo, who I think is very good, he hasn't been great the last couple of games.
And you mentioned Zach Hyman. July 1st is a time for a lot of mistakes. A lot of GMs should go golfing instead of being in their war room on July 1st. But of the July 1st signings in the last several years, how many have been better than Zach Hyman? And I have to admit it. You can't do revisionist history and pretend that. I looked at the term of that deal when they signed it, knowing the style of play that he plays and where he makes his living in the crease. And I'm like, we'll see how that age deals. But boy, so far, Zach Hyman, unreal.
Tidy, what was it, 83 points this year?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And how he can play with any of those superstars or up and down the lineup, clutch like he was in Game 4 in overtime. I mean, he's been unbelievable.
I have a theory here on McDavid too, and not starting a conspiracy theory or anything like that. But
I like it. Bring it, Lalonde.
I'm not sure he's popping at 100% right now. I think there's something in one of his legs that has been giving him a bit of an issue. A few games ago, and it's foggy for me, I can't remember which one. If you guys recall, excuse me, he took a hit And I was in
Doughty
the
got a
building.
knee on knee.
Yeah,
Doughty got a knee
Doughty?
on knee, stepping up on him in the neutral zone.
And I was watching him
He was
on
flexing
the
on the
bench
bench.
after.
He was kind of like massaging it. He was kind of working it
But
through.
remember, he had the towel in front of his face while he was
wasn't
talking
letting
to
the
the
people
trainer.
read his lips while he was talking to them.
Had a look of concern on his face. Well, what happened is they went to commercial break shortly after that, and McDavid spent the entire commercial break on the ice skating the figure eights, shaking the leg and sort of testing it out. Now, he's been good. Like, I'm not saying that he clearly is hurt, but that extra gear that he has where he just, I mean, he'll be going this way and then bang that way so fast. His crossovers, like if you think about the penalty he drew in the first period last game, if you look at him come across that blue line, Johnny, both his feet are planted and he's turning kind of like on both his skates. When do you ever see McDavid hit the blue line without his feet moving? He's protecting something to my eye. Now I might be overthinking it, but I wonder if there's a little something missing that is normally there in his step. Count the number of times he hit full speed in that last game.
3 off days a good thing.
Yeah. Well, that's conventional wisdom would be that it benefits the Kings more. Bit older, some of their guys, right? But I think this break comes at a great time for the Oil too.
And then wrap the series up. So limit the mileage. The Oilers want to play 3 more series after this one, and they have a great chance. The Oilers legitimately have a great chance to make the final.
If Seattle takes out Colorado,
I mean, the Oilers would be the prohibitive favorite to go to the final. I think, even though they're starting the road against the Knights, the Golden Knights, if they get there. But bank the rest early because it's going to be even more taxing later. So maybe now Connor McDavid's got 8 points through his 5 games. It's not like he's not been really good. But you're right. It's also hard for LA. LA doesn't give you many chances to really open it up. So maybe it's a bit of all that.
Yep. Be interesting to see if the Oilers are able to take advantage of this break and then wrap this thing up. Okay, boys, that was the breakdown. Nice job. Brought to you by Kuma Outdoor Gear. Bit of a different format for our final segment today. I know how much you love red card, yellow card, no card.
I do love it.
How passionate you guys are about this amazing thing that we've created.
I didn't even understand the question last week. So
yeah, you were a mess last week on it.
But you gave a great answer.
You did. I didn't understand anything you just said, but I say no card. I think that's what you said. All right, let's get to red card, yellow card, no card. And it's going to be brought to you by our good friends at Liberty Smart Security. They specialize in having your back. High-quality advanced smart security systems for your home or your business. They use leading-edge technology to protect the things that you value most in your life. Your home is your castle, so protect it with Liberty Smart Security. You can check out the website at libertysecurity.ca. I have a Liberty security system in my house. I love it. Nice and easy to use, intuitive, great technology. Great peace of mind knowing you're protecting your family with a Liberty security system. So we're going to call this rapid red card because we don't just have one to focus on. I'm going to rip you guys through 3 red card, yellow card, no card scenarios, potential rule changes. I don't even know what we want to call them. And you guys just weigh in on if you like it, you give it if you hate it, you give it a red card, yellow card. And if you actually don't mind it, you can give it a no card. So these are just sort of based on some scenarios that we have seen. Some of these from the brain of the Quizmaster, by the way. Players generally forced to face the media after games, right? We know this. Referees should face the same scrutiny in one form or another and answer to the media, preferably, in person or through a surrogate. Have we come to the point where there should be some sort of explanation or availability with referees after games? Fans would absolutely love it. What do you think of that idea, Johnny? What do you give it?
I give it no card. Absolutely. It should happen. They're professionals. They're paid well. They're grown men and women. Like, they can go out there and explain, I didn't call that roughing because. I called the interference penalty on Foligno because. And there may be moments where the answer is, I missed that call, which won't make anyone feel very good. And once that's out there, then it's out there. But absolutely. And I don't want it in a report like the NBA does it. I don't want a surrogate. These are professionals. Answer some questions. It's not the end of the world. No card. Make it happen.
P?
My dogs clearly agree in the background here. No card. I like it. What I would do with a baby step, though, is So every playoff series, I don't know if the people at home know this, there's a series rep from the PHWA, the Professional Hockey Writers Association, that kind of handles the flow of what's the media avail going to be the next day and blah, blah, blah. So, for example, in the Leafs Lightning series, Chris Johnston is a series rep for the PHWA. So he's in touch with the two teams every day.
So when he wants to sleep in, there's no avail.
Yeah. Chris never sleeps. But the point is, what I would do, because you know that's a major change for the NHL, is I would have the series rep. If there's a demand to have an answer from the refs after a game about something controversial, I would do like a pool reporter thing where the series rep for the series asks the questions, gets the answers, and then shares information with everyone as a transition to where we eventually want to get to what you're saying, MJ. That would be my idea.
I don't know. I mean, I hear what you guys are saying, and I would like to hear some explanations too. But sending a reporter in to grill the official about calls and non-calls, and I think fans would complain more than anything about things that weren't asked about. Why didn't you ask him
but
about
it would
this?
be one play, really. Come on. I mean, that's what we're talking about here, right?
I don't know. Like, it doesn't have to be grilling. You called an interference penalty on Marcus Foligno. When you look at that now, can you explain to me why you thought that was interference when Hakanpää just touched the puck?
Yeah.
And explain it.
Here's what I saw.
Here's what I saw.
But guys, what about the idea that sometimes officials just flat out make mistakes?
But that's an answer.
Yeah, and that's fine.
we would play during games, and the refs were like, "Yeah, I missed that." You're like, "Okay." It actually diffuses the situation. Like, what are you gonna swear at the guy? Well, don't do that again. They don't mean to miss it. They miss it. A high stick, that Mayfield high stick on the overtime goal there a few games ago, where he got clipped by, was it Martinuk before the overtime goal by Jesper Fast? They don't mean to miss them. They just missed them, and that's okay.
I was told they don't look at stuff between periods, hey? When
wrong.
refs go in between periods, that they don't necessarily look
they do.
at, they don't have it available. I was told by a series official they don't have it available to them.
Maybe because they don't want to influence the rest of the game. They see it after the game. Well,
that's just it.
Right.
Like, I wonder, do they go in between periods and take a look at things? Because then you're skating out on the ice feeling like, I owe that guy one. If you know you really badly blew a call.
I don't know. I talked to the refs between the benches, and I get the impression that they take a look at things
that they've seen. Hey,
yeah.
But I feel. Have we not heard of refs still going up to a player mid-game and saying, "By the way, I think I got that wrong." I think we've heard that.
I've had them say that to me mid-game.
Yeah,
like, it absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was interesting when I was told that. I was like, oh. I didn't.
Maybe it's policy. I don't know.
They did. Yeah, maybe it's playoff policy or something. I don't know. Okay, moving on to the next one.
I like that one.
Austin Matthews basically forced to fight Steven Stamkos, sort of. Then getting the 5-minute penalty. The suggestion is the NHL needs to adopt the Craig Button self-defense rule. Players who are forced to fight to defend themselves from potential injury should receive 0 penalty minutes. So if a player skates up to another player and straight up forces him to fight, that player is allowed to drop his gloves, fight back, defend himself, and then go sit on the bench and play next shift. You were forced to defend yourself in a bare knuckles fight. No penalty.
That's a red card, because every fight I was in, I would have been forced to fight. So I would have been the beneficiary of this rule.
You'd have been safer.
Not.
You're just jealous if that ever came.
Yeah, right. I'm like, I would have fought everyone. It'd been perfect. No, red card, because there's already a rule in place for this. It's called the instigator.
Correct.
And call that more often. It doesn't have to be a mauling to be an instigator. The Stamkos Matthews is the clearest example of an instigator I can even imagine. Call that.
Should have been.
And if you really don't want to fight, if you don't drop your gloves, I would have no problem with a 5-2. I give Stamkos 5 for roughing or fighting, and Austin Matthews 2 for roughing. It doesn't have to be 5-5 and an instigator. You could also go 5 for fighting, 2 for roughing in the same exchange if someone is clearly an unwilling participant. But red card this no self-defense rule. I don't like it one bit. Call the instigator. That's your solution.
Yeah, I'll go yellow card because I like the spirit of what Craig is suggesting through the Ryan Rishaug vehicle. But I'm sharing a brain with MJ here. In fact, in that moment in Game 3, had that been an instigator to Stamkos, at least would have had a 5-on-3 power play,
and they
that
should
would
have
been.
And they should have.
Yeah, I mean that would have been a big deal. Yeah.
But if someone wants to defend themselves, Johnny, if I skate up to you and I'm going to fight you, whether you want to fight me or not, you have no choice. You can't be
choice.
expected to defend
Shoggy.
yourself with your gloves.
How
Let me
often?
finish. With your gloves on.
Okay.
You can hug the guy.
On.
You can hug the guy.
You should be able to drop your gloves so that you can at least hang on to the guy.
5 and 2.
If you're not throwing punches,
5 and 2.
Right. Well, sure.
5 and 2. I guess it's one
just
step
to drop your gloves and
on.
try not to get hurt.
So what you're saying?
That happen? It doesn't happen though.
Yeah.
Like it almost never happens. Where like
never.
If like someone is really doesn't. Yeah. Call the instigator. It's fighting's allowed in the game. It's part of it. If you're going to play in the NHL, there's moments where you may be involved in a fight, even if you don't want to. That's part of
what
the
you're
game.
saying there, Ryan. What you're saying is you don't like that. In fact, in real time, well, not in real time, because you got to wait for a break and play. I think Austin Matthews was actually gone for 9 minutes of the game. What you're saying is you don't like that he was gone for half the third period there.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're a skilled player and you need to defend yourself so you don't get hurt because someone's coming at you fighting. Right. You should be allowed to drop your gloves and defend yourself without being forced into the penalty box for 5 minutes. So, Johnny, I like your idea of just give the other guy a 2.
Yeah.
But you can't defend yourselves. You can't defend yourself against somebody with your gloves on. You can't. You can't grab them. It's dangerous. The best way to defend yourself is to get your gloves off and seat belt. And, you know, you probably know a thing or two about that, Johnny.
I know all about it.
Holding on for dear life, trying not to get hurt.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. It also doesn't happen very often, but I don't mind. I think in those cases, there should be way more often. It should be harsher to the guy who's being the instigator, however you get there. Yeah.
Just those. I mean, in that case, it was 2 skilled guys, so it's not as big a discrepancy.
I was just going to say, I mean,
third or fourth liner. You can get someone to, feel like they got to defend themselves. The extra
or try to take Austin Matthews off the ice for 5 minutes. You take the trade kind of thing. But
okay, final one. Teams should have the option to decline penalty shots and take the 2-minute power play instead. It wouldn't happen that often, I don't think.
This is what's better than no card? This is like a green card. Like, yes,
want it.
Sign us up now, today. And the only time it would really happen, because, maybe the Oilers power play, but the success rate on a penalty shot is about 33%.
Right.
The success rate on the Oilers power play is about 33%. Everyone else is below that. So you're almost always going to take the penalty shot because you're going to have a better chance of scoring. 2 situations where you take the penalty. One, of course, when you're up by a goal with 2 minutes left, like, no, we'll take the power play and play the rest of the game on the power play. That's one.
Good point.
2, where we're already on the power play and we'll take a 5-on-3. Because a 5-on-3 for 2 minutes might have a better chance than 33% of scoring. Those are the 2 situations would come up. But anything that takes the advantage away from the team committing the infraction, I'm all for. Don't help them out. Give me, the team that was fouled, the options to do what I want. Green card, sign me up today.
I'll stick by the rules. No card. I like it as well. And in fact, I literally mentioned this to the person beside me in the press box the other night when Brandon Hagel had the shorthanded penalty shot. It was Brandon Hagel, right? In Tampa, Toronto? I thought it was.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway,
he buried it in the pad.
I was thinking, I was thinking to myself, when the Lightning instead
take the penalty. Take the penalty.
Well, take a penalty because now there's no more power play for the Leafs. Right. And at the end of it, they would get some power play time. Yeah. So I was thinking that. Yeah, I like it.
It depends who is shooting too, doesn't it, Johnny? Like if you've got a third pairing right shot defenseman who somehow got tripped on, or like, wouldn't it be
that would
depending
factor
on
in.
Who? Yeah,
that could factor in. Sure. But I think teams, I like that one a lot. There'd be, it's a little more decision making, a little more intrigue. It's all good.
Okay, bonus one before we wrap up here, and we're going to do this one as the music is rolling. Bonus one. When you score a shorthanded goal, other team's power play is over.
What? What's worse than a red card? Oh my God. Jeez. We were on such a good run.
No, there's a league that's actually doing this overseas, I guess. They're experimenting with it. That if you score a shorthanded goal, that's it. Power play's over, baby.
That's ridiculous.
The bonus question should have been, and this has actually come up at a lot of GM meetings.
If you scored, you get 2 more. You get the full 2 minutes.
You get the full 2 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, which is the original rule book, I think.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, boys. That was red card, yellow card, no card times 4. on this week's edition, brought to you by Liberty Smart Security. Good job, guys. Enjoy the games over the next couple of days. We're going to have tons to talk about when we regroup next week. So enjoy the games. Have a good day, boys.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in, folks. Appreciate your downloads and your subscriptions. If you get a chance, hop on over to iTunes and leave us a review. If you like it, don't like it, good, bad, indifferent. Always like to hear from you here on Got Your Back. Big thanks to our sponsors, Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals, Kuma Outdoor Gear, and Liberty Smart Security. Enjoy the rest of your day. Look forward to chatting again soon. Enjoy the games. We want to tell you about a truly Canadian company. Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals provides equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry. But what sets them apart is their get-her-done attitude. It's a core value of their company. I've been to the offices. I've seen how they proudly display that on the wall at each branch. Every one of the staff members lives by the get-her-done formula to ensure they'll never let their customers down. They'll bend over backwards to get their clientele what they need when they need it. They don't make excuses. Cross Country Canada takes great pride in this attitude, and they truly believe that the success of their customer is their success. You can't get much more Canadian